President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin delivering dueling speeches as the fighting in Ukraine inches closer and closer to that one-year mark.
President Biden firing back at the Russian leader after Putin accused the West of starting the war. Trey Yingst has details from Kyiv, Ukraine.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never.
The eyes of the world on Warsaw and President Biden as he delivers remarks to a massive crowd, waving Polish, Ukrainian, and American flags. The speech coming hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin blamed the West for the year-long war in Ukraine.
We are not fighting the Ukrainian people. The people of Ukraine became a hostage of the Kyiv regime and its Western masters.
Biden calling on the autocrat to put a stop to the fighting.
This war is never a necessity. It's a tragedy. President Putin chose this war. Every day the war continues is his choice. He could end the war with a word.
The rebuttal, a rallying cry to NATO allies as he declares unwavering support for Ukraine, with no end to the war in sight.
He thought NATO would fracture and divide. Instead, NATO is more united and more unified than ever.
Ahead of the speech, Biden met with NATO ally Polish President Andrzej Duda, in which he reaffirmed America's commitment to European security and stability.
We have to have a security in Europe. It's that basic, that simple, that consequential.
In his State of the Nation address, Putin denied any wrongdoing for the invasion. He also announced Russia would be suspending the New START treaty, the only remaining nuclear arms agreement with the U.S. NATO officials asking Russia to reconsider.
More nuclear weapons and less arms control makes the world more dangerous.
President Biden is expected to announce more sanctions against Russia later this week. In Kyiv, Trey Yingst, Fox 32, Chicago.
And joining us now to discuss the war in Ukraine is political science professor Stephen Caliendo of North Central College. Professor Caliendo, as always, thank you so much for being on the program. We appreciate it.
It's good to see you both.
All right, so let's start with Putin's announcement that he is now withdrawing from the world's last remaining nuclear arms treaty. What kind of implications do you think this could have?
Well, I think, Anthony, the language he used was pausing participation, not necessarily withdrawing from the treaty. And I know it sounds like a professor answer. I'm splitting hairs, but I think it might be meaningful. We, those of us of a certain age, remember, crouching under our desks and practicing for in the event of a nuclear war. These treaties were what led us to a place where we weren't going to have to do that any longer, and our children don't do that. So it's very worrisome. Given the status of how the arrangements are between the United States and Russia at this moment, that participation will not continue.
And China's top diplomat is in Moscow and will meet with the Russian foreign minister tomorrow, we're hearing. There have been a lot of rumblings that China is already backing Russia in this war, but this is more of an outward show of support. What do you make of that?
It'll be interesting to see what comes out of it, or what we learn about what comes out of it, whether or not it's going to be active support for Russia in the war against the Ukraine, or whether or not it has something to do with this conversation about the nuclear arms treaty. And so a lot of this is positioning. It always is, and that's okay. I mean, that's part of what politics is. But these are very real, dangerous circumstances that we're talking about. And, having a country as large and as powerful as China, having these conversations with Russia is certainly worrisome.
Yes, absolutely. Well, another thing I wanted to ask you about, Professor, is President Biden's appearance over there itself. The appearance itself. What do you make of the fact that he made the trip over there? Some commentators saying the president and the U.S. in general should be leading this war, not leading it, but supporting Ukraine from the sidelines and not making a show of it. What do you make of the president's appearance there?
Well, I don't know how long it was in the works, but it certainly was a deliberate move, and coming on the heels of the exchanges during the State of the Union and some of the concerns that Republicans expressed since that. It's an interesting confirmation of support by the United States toward to the Ukrainian people and President Zelensky. The speech that he gave today from Poland was similarly symbolic. And he's talking to multiple audiences here. He's talking to the world audience and to the West and to the support that he hopes to continue to get from European countries and other countries. But he's also talking back to us and to Republicans in the Congress in particular, who have been very critical not only of the support for the war generally, but even critical of him being gone on President's Day and going to Ukraine instead of attending to some of the problems that we have here at home. So I think he was being very strategic, both in making the trip and in the language he used in his speech today.